Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me to discuss the recovery and growth in the global LNG markets is Meg Gentle, CEO of Nasdaq-listed Tellurian. Meg, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you, Jill.
Explain to the audience what LNG is and what it can be used for.
LNG is liquefied natural gas. So it's basically natural gas that has been cooled to negative 260 degrees Fahrenheit so that it can be shipped on very, very large tankers to international markets. And then it's used in everything we use energy for. So power generation, home heating, transportation. And actually in the US and Europe, it comprises about 30% of our overall energy usage. And it's growing in other places like India and China, which today are only about 6% natural gas as we continue to support the growth in renewables and the process toward cleaner energy. Natural gas will become a lot bigger part of those economies also.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Is it better for the environment than, let's say, traditional other sources of energy?
So much better. Compared to coal, natural gas-fired power generation has half the CO2 emissions and about a third compared to oil-fired sources. And that's why you see natural gas actually moving so aggressively into the power sector and in fact into the transportation sector, as a lot of heavy trucking fleets are converting, from diesel to natural gas in heavy trucks and also in ships.
How did COVID-19 impact the company and the LNG markets overall?
We saw a reduction in demand when everyone took cover for quarantine, and that probably bottomed out in June. It's looking like June was the bottom of the LNG trade. And so now we're in the recovery process with an amazing shift toward increasing natural gas demand, starting actually in China and India. India is still about 20% increase year over year in their LNG imports, and we're seeing that steadily increase month over month. And as I was thinking about the show, talking about trade talks and what is actually talking in the LNG industry, and that frankly is prices. Prices are talking and they're increasing, and they're really telling the market we are calling for more natural gas.
So we're in the recovery phase now, and you expect some growth to come back to LNG. Are there pockets or regions that are performing better than others, and who's the best positioned in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, definitely the most amount of growth we're seeing coming out of Asia, and that's where prices are recovering and markets are recovering the fastest. And I mentioned growth in India. The Indian market is moving from about 6% natural gas use to 15% in its total energy use. And to support that, they're spending about $100 billion on infrastructure to bring natural gas from the coastlines into the city gates. And a lot of that investment is also happening in the transport sector as they're moving gas for heavy trucking in addition to power generation. So I would say Indian market, Chinese market are the areas of the biggest growth. We'll see them doubling their natural gas usage over the next 5 or so years. And a number of Asian countries are, following that example and increasing their LNG imports. So Asia, the Middle East, and a little bit Europe and even the US are having increases in natural gas as we are using natural gas to support the transition to overall, cleaner fuels and increased use of renewables.
Tell us about Tellurian and what you're developing the business around.
Yeah, Jill, in that context, the context of that growing market, Tellurian is a producer of natural gas. So we produce gas in North Louisiana, and we're also a developer of very, very large infrastructure to export that gas from the US. So we've developed the Driftwood LNG project, which is a large export terminal on the southern coast of Louisiana. It's fully permitted and actually fully engineered. We're going to begin construction on that terminal next year and be able to export LNG from the US to international markets. We really have only one step remaining to be able to start the project, and that is to finish our equity investors that are coming with us as partners in the project. Those are going to be international investors that invest about $6 billion of equity to get the project built. And then we'll be delivering LNG to them at a very, very low cost. So it's a competitive project along with other projects in the US and other new construction of infrastructure on an international basis. The Tellurian business, as we go forward, will move from just solely a producer of gas to actually an exporter and a trader of liquefied natural gas internationally. We're building a portfolio that will generate about $2 billion a year of annual cash flow at full operations. That's roughly $7 a share of free cash flow to our shareholders. As I said, we'll start construction on that next year. It's about a 4-year construction project. So taking into consideration the construction time period, we view the kind of discounted value of the company at roughly $15 a share when we're able to start construction in about a year's time.
So when you say this project takes 4 years to build, just for the benefit of the audience, how big is a project like that?
It sits on 1,000 acres of land on the Calcasieu River, so needs a very large acreage position. It has 3 very, very large storage tanks, and those storage tanks are about 16 stories tall, if you can think of that, in terms of height. And the terminal itself can accommodate 3 LNG tankers at one time. And the LNG tanker itself is about the same size as the storage tank. So, several football fields long and 16 stories tall.
Wow, that's quite remarkable, Meg. Thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you, Jill. See you soon.
All right, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.